Yep, it's time for year-end prep already. Year-end? Are you kidding me? It's only, It's November. Hi, entrepreneurs. I'm Vicky Brown, and you're in the right place if you want to engage your team, boost your business, and grow your leadership muscle. I know, I can't believe it either. It comes too soon. But the fact is that now is the perfect time to start putting your year-end HR tasks in order. And yes, there is a lot to do, so let's get right to it. First up is the ugly elephant in the room: taxes. Oh, sure, there's your personal taxes and the company's taxes, but the taxes I'm talking about are the payroll taxes for you and your employees. Let's start with you. Throughout the year, you were hopefully reviewing the quarterly payroll tax filings. You know, the 941 for the feds and the comparable filing for your state. In California, it's the DE9. Now, if you're working with a payroll processor, they most likely are taking care of the filings for you, but that doesn't mean you're off the hook. You see, each quarter, when they send you your copies of the filings, you should take a look at the total paychecks for that quarter and compare them against the tax filings. And here's a pro tip. The numbers, well, they should be the same. And if they aren't, then it's a very good idea to run down the discrepancy. And that's why it's a good idea to do this each quarter. Because if now's the first time you're doing the double check, well, that means you have 3 quarters to go through. And if you wait until the end of the year and something doesn't square, then you'll have to look through 4 quarters. Oh, and don't forget that if something is wrong, it's far easier to refile a quarterly tax filing than a tax filing for the whole year. So, all that to say, really try to stay top on reviewing your quarterlies. Now, on the employee side, it's also a really good time to remind employees to double check their withholding amounts. Generally, they can find that on their pay stub. It'll show, for instance, if they are set for single, 2 exemptions, or married, 5 exemptions, etc. And again, it's better for them to catch this before the end of the year. There isn't anything much worse than an upset employee because it's March of the following year and they just realized that their withholding amount for the prior year was all wrong. And now they owe massive taxes. And at that point, it becomes a whole thing because they think it's your fault for putting in the wrong numbers and you have to dig up the original documents because you're sure they submitted what you put in, etc. So just save yourself and them the headache. Tell them to double check it now. That way you still have some runway to make payroll adjustments on future checks before the year is done. And while you're asking them to check things, they should also double check their address on the pay stub so you can make any adjustments now and ensure they get their year-end and W-2s mailed to the right place. In most cases, the payroll company will send W-2s directly to the employee's home address, so it's really important that the information is up to date in the payroll system. And still on the subject of money, are there any year-end commissions or bonuses happening? If so, make sure you're clear on which paycheck they're going to hit. It's so easy to say, oh, it'll be December 31st. But if you process on the 31st, that payroll won't hit until after the 1st. And even if you do process prior to the 31st, depending on when you submit, the payroll process may have a special deadline because of the year-end crunch. So again, you may miss it and end up with a payment in the next year, which you don't want. My rule of thumb is to make sure everything is submitted and processed no later than the 25th. Yep, Christmas. That's the deadline in my head. That way I can be sure whatever payment is happening will count in the current year. And one final thing about taxes. Start gathering the new year tax forms as soon as possible. I generally like to do what I call a tax package in January. The package gets sent to all employees, reminding them that if they want to update their withholdings, they have to complete the form and return it. I also include the Earned Income Tax Credit Notice. This notice has to be provided within 1 week of distribution of the W-2s for the year. Now, most times your payroll company will include it with the W-2s, but I think it's a good idea to send it with the tax package as well, just to be sure you're covered. Oh, and be sure to double check. Your state might have a required notice as well. Now, on to the policies. This can be a bit tricky because state and federal legislatures have a bad habit of signing new bills into law late in December. I really hate that. But there are always new regs that happen during the year that you should review. A huge one is the minimum wage. Now is the time, well, probably after the time, to review the minimum wage for your location. And yes, that means you have to check at the federal, state, and sometimes county and city level as well. Do a review of what you're paying everyone and make any adjustments that are needed. Oh, and another fun fact, don't just look at non-exempt levels. There are minimum levels for exempt employees too. And if you fall below them, the person loses their exemption. In English, that means you'll have to start paying them overtime. So it's best to stay on top of those minimum wage rates. Other things to be on the lookout for are things like sick leave rules, paid family leave programs. They're popping up all over the nation. Has everyone completed their required training for the year? Like anti-harassment, that comes immediately to mind. If your benefit programs were new at the end or beginning of the year, you should start reviewing your options now. Check in with your team. Is there anything particular that they want or don't want? Start gathering intel. So when you talk to your broker, you have a good idea of the direction you want to go. Of course, there are other things you can evaluate, like the recruiting and onboarding process, job descriptions, doing an I-9 self-audit. You'll definitely think of other things to add to the list, but I think this will give you a good start. And to give you a hand, I've created a New Year HR review checklist. You can grab your free copy by using the link below in the description. It'll guide you through each area that needs your attention and make sure you don't leave anything undone. If you found this information helpful, please subscribe and share. And remember, your inspired leadership is the secret sauce to having a high-performance team and a wildly successful business you'll love. I'll see you next time on Leader's Journey.